You see, that would be very clever. Worked out
Wouldn't it be, if I could do that, I'd be impressed.
If you could do that, you wouldn't be up here trying to get a code.
That's actually true. I just need to test one thing.
Since I can stand up here, which one is the one to push the slides back and forth?
Forward and back.
Couldn't be simpler. Thank you.
No problem.
And that's a pointer.
Yes.
Do they have to hit any buttons?
You just. You're welcome. Right. Good morning, everyone. If you would please begin to take your seats, we're ready to begin the meeting. Good morning and welcome to the 2015 annual HCPCS public meetings. The meeting today will be focused on supply and other, and it is day one. My name is Felicia Eccleston. I'm a member of the Part B drug team, and I price drugs for Medicare Part B. So today, I'd just like to let you know this meeting is being webcast via CMS. The CMS webcast is live, so it begins as our meeting begins. By your attendance, you are given consent to the use and distribution of your name, likeliness, and voice during this meeting. You are also given consent to the use and distribution of any personally identifiable information that you or others may disclose during today's meeting. Please do not disclose any personal health information. The webcast can be found in archives after the meeting on YouTube or the CMS Ustream website, and I believe it is there permanently. So just some housekeeping items. If you leave out and you make a right turn and go down the hall towards the lobby, on your left-hand side, you'll see the restrooms. If you continue out as if you were going to the main lobby and make the right at the elevators, proceed straight down the stairs that'll take you to our coffee stand and to the cafeteria. We have been asked to remind you that for security reasons, visitors may not enter any areas in the building other than the publicly designated areas, which is the main lobby, the lower lobby, and cafeteria. If you're found somewhere else in the building, you need to have an escort. If any of you will need assistance in arranging for taxi service today, please see the concierge in the lobby. CMS is a non-smoking campus. There's a smoking area outside both of the guard stations outside of the main entrance to the building. At this time, I'd like to ask that you would please place all cell phones and Blackberries on silent. I would like to also ask that all speakers and anyone answering questions, please be sure to step up to a microphone so that we can hear everyone. This includes outside participants as well as agency staff. And just so that you know, the primary speakers will stand where I am. All 5-minute speakers will please approach the microphone right here in front of the stage. I would like to also ask for everyone's cooperation and sticking to your speaking time frames. Primary speakers, you have up to 15 minutes. 5-minute speakers, you have up to 5 minutes. I will be keeping your time on my cell phone. It's in airplane mode, so don't be alarmed. So once you're down to 2 minutes, I'll gently ding a bell that lets you know to begin wrapping up. And once your 15 minutes has ended, I'll gently stand up and begin to approach behind you so that you know that your time limit has expired. For 5-minute speakers, I won't give you any indication that your time is nearing. At the end of the 5 minutes, I'll just stand up and begin to approach the podium. So, speakers may not call on any other speakers. Only the moderator can call speakers. Because of the late start of today's meeting, there will not be a morning coffee break, but we will have a lunch break. So, at this time, I would like to introduce Cindy Hake. She is the Deputy Director of CM's Division of DemiPost Policy and of the CMS National Level 2 HCPCS program. She will provide opening remarks and a brief description of the background and purpose of today's public meeting. Cindy?
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for traveling. Thanks for traveling to be here with us today. We appreciate it. And actually, you guys are the lucky ones today. Some folks have to come tomorrow, which probably puts a dent in their Memorial Weekend plans. So today will be a fuller meeting, as we tried to get most people in today if we could. We're happy that you guys join us. Always, this meeting means a lot to us because we sometimes do actually change our decisions based on comments that we get at this public forum. So it's proven to be a valuable process, not only to our applicants but to us as well. So before the public meetings occur, CMS's HCPCS work group reviews all applications and formulates the preliminary decisions that you see before you in your agendas. The work group includes members who provide input based on their knowledge of national program operating needs of Medicare, Medicaid, and the private insurance sector. We also have representatives from the Veterans Administration. So you do have all insurance sectors looking at your applications who are very well versed in the policies of that sector. We publish our preliminary decisions along with our rationale in advance of the public meeting, and then via this process invite your input to either support or refute our preliminary decisions. And as such, this meeting is a reconsideration opportunity. After the public meetings, the work group reconvenes and we re-review each and every application before us, together with the input that we've received at this meeting, any written input that has come in, before we finalize our decisions, our coding decisions. Those of you who are providing comments today, if you haven't done so already, please make sure that you get your summary to Jen Carver and make sure that you've highlighted your chief points. We do publish a summary of the public meeting proceedings. That'll be sometime in August, and we want to make sure that we've captured your most important points, and also we want to make sure that we capture those points that are most critical to you when we reconvene and re-review the applications. Final decision letters are released by mid-November, early to mid-November. It's about the same time that the annual update is published. And last year we made some additional improvements in our process to add transparency, and we began actually publishing our final decisions. Previous to this, they were only sent by decision letter to the individual applicant. But now we publish the final decisions in two forms. One in a spreadsheet. This is on CMS's HCPCS website, a spreadsheet that goes from the original application, the request, to preliminary decision and final decision. And then we also publish narrative summaries that look very much like the packets that you have before you, and then after the preliminary decision language, you'll see a brief summary of any comments that were made, followed by the final decision. And that, I like that document because it's kind of tells the whole story of the application. But we're being much more transparent now with final decisions. Jennifer Carver began live streaming these public meetings last year, and that's an improvement, so people who are unable to make it to Baltimore are able to at least listen and view remotely. And we also established a new web-based notice and comment process to gather public input regarding internal decisions. These are not the subject of external applications, but internal decisions to discontinue codes when those codes are not replaced by other codes. And we will publish, if we have any this year that we're considering discontinuing, we will publish by July 1. As of the last meeting, I didn't think we had any. As of this meeting, I do think we're going to have a few, and they may even be published sooner than July 1. We may have a couple rounds. So do be watching our website, the CMS's HCPCS website, for that kind of information, always at this time of year. Okay, and so one more comment. After years and years, really more than a decade of for me anyways, of processing HCPCS code applications, our little staff has, as a courtesy, assisted applicants by advising them of areas of their application that may have been incomplete. Sometimes obvious areas, just completely not answering questions, forgetting to sign, this kind of thing. And when applications come in, and they generally do come in like right at the deadline, the applicants haven't given themselves time to react and make their application complete, even if we contact them, still within the application deadline. And so this has been, a growing problem. And this year we're having to say enough is enough, because our little staff has spent about the first month of the application cycle helping applicants make their application complete. And we are unable to do that and still do what we need to do to support the HCPCS work group. So we're going to implement strictly next year that we will not be able to process applications if they're incomplete or if they're late. So it's a heads up. I'm sure that you would rather hear this now from me so you can plan for the next application cycle, as opposed to hearing next January when you submit your applications and we say we can't take it because it's incomplete. So make sure that your quality review work is done before you submit your application to us. And that's all I have for today. It should be a very productive day and a full day. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Cindy, for that overview. Now I will introduce Joe Kaiser. Joe will provide a description of payment for DMEPOS. Joe is the Director of Division of DMEPOS Policy in CM's Chronic Policy Group.
Good morning. I assume there's a handout that was provided with the agenda for the payment rules. Yeah. So Cindy covered one part of the reason we're here. I covered the other part, and that has to do with getting public consultation on preliminary payment determinations for new DMEPOS items. As Felicia noted, I'm the Director of the Division of DMEPOS Policy. We're the division in CMS that implements the payment rules for DMEPOS. In the statute, there's a mandate that we get public consultation on preliminary payment determinations for new DME, which generally means a new HCPCS code. And so we're mandated by the statute to get public consultation for DME. So that's the purpose of the meeting today. In addition to coding determinations, we get public consultation on preliminary payment determinations. We also seek public comments on payment determinations for other items. Now that's not mandated by the statute, but we do seek the public consultation for the other items as well. The handout that goes along with the agenda talks about DME payment rules, the basics of DME payment rules. When you're talking about HCPCS changes, of course, HCPCS changes create payment changes. There's different scenarios depending on what the coding determination is. If the determination is to use existing codes, then the payment rules associated with that existing code would apply to that item or service. If there is a change in the HCPCS, then there can be other ramifications for payment. Under Medicare, we've had a long-standing rule related to continuity of pricing. We have mandatory rules that we implement for items. And so when we change a code, we have to apply those rules and make sure that the payment continues as it has in the past based on those rules. So we developed years ago guidelines for some coding scenarios, like when a code is exploded into components or several codes are imploded. There are rules on how we apply the pricing. If a code is a single code that's exploded into its component parts, then the sum of the fees for the components must equal the sum for the previous code. If a code is exploded into separate but similar items, then we apply the price for the previous code to the multiple codes. If codes for components, the reverse, is imploded into a single code, then we take those component fees, add them up, and that makes the fee for the new item. And then if you have similar items but different items that are imploded into a code, we take a weighted average of the fees for the items that were separately coded previously to come up with the payment amount for the new item. So if you have a new code that doesn't fall under any of those scenarios, those implosion and explosion scenarios, it's a new category of items altogether. Then we have rules that are termed gap filling, because we have a gap in the data that the law mandates to use to set the payment. So we fill that gap by trying to estimate what we would have paid based on the rules of the statute for that item or service. That generally means either using fees for comparable items or using supplier price lists if they're available. So those are the two methods that we use if we have to price a altogether new category of items and services. So that basically runs down the different payment decisions that we have to make based on coding actions. And so we look forward to getting your comments on very specific coding and payment determinations that are on the agenda today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. I just want to reiterate that there is a description of DMEPOS payment in your agenda at the end. Now, I'd like to introduce some other CMS HCPCS staff. Many of you have had the opportunity to speak with this staff or even converse by email, and they are responsible for getting this meeting together. So first, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Carver. If you please stand. Okay. Jennifer is the National HCPCS Public Meeting Coordinator, and as Cindy said, Jen is responsible for the live stream. Next, I'd like to introduce Kimberly Combs Miller. She is CMS's National HCPCS Workgroup Coordinator. Okay, I don't see Laurie Jackson, but I would like, oh, there's Laurie, I'm sorry. Laurie Jackson. And she is also a valuable part of the HCPCS team. So these staff work very, very hard to put together all the thousands of details that are necessary to provide you with this opportunity for public comment on today. So again, we thank you all. I'd like to introduce Dr. Subhash Dugarala. Subhash is the medical advisor to CMS's HCPCS work group. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce the men behind the booth, Mr. Charles Hirsch and Mr. Felix, for so professionally handling all of our audiovisual needs. Okay. So now for the good stuff, I get to describe how our meeting will proceed today. So everyone should have received the meeting agenda. If you have not, there are copies still available out on the table. For each item on today's agenda, there's a written summary of the application and of CMS's preliminary coding decision. The meeting will proceed one agenda item at a time until we have completed. We will hear a presentation from the registered speaker, if there is one, and any registered 5-minute speakers, if there is one. We would like to ask that every speaker state who you represent, state your relationship to the applicant and to the manufacturer, declare in your oral presentation and in your written summary whether or not you have any financial involvement with the manufacturers or competitors of any items or services being discussed. This includes any payment, salary, or benefit provided to the speaker by the manufacturer. Please also state whether you agree or disagree with the preliminary decision, and when you summarize your comments, state your rationale for your agreement or disagreement. So, when we hear from our primary speaker, next we'll take any 5-minute speakers, and then once we've heard from every speaker for each item, then we'll invite questions and comments. Okay, so now we're ready to begin. Agenda item number 1, attachment 15.6, request to establish a unique level 2 HCPCS code to identify a monitoring and biofeedback gait training system, trade name My iSmartStep system. Primary speaker, Kendra Brill.
Good morning. So I'd like to begin by thanking CMS for having us today and appreciate the opportunity to talk about the My iSmartStep. My name is Kendra Brill, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of Andante Medical Devices. I'm also the Managing Director of D. Simone Group Investments, a family office who is invested in this company. However, I do not get compensation for today's hearing. I'm here to respectfully disagree with CMS's preliminary decision, which stated that a national program operating need was not identified, and explain why my iSmartStep should receive a new HCPCS code. If you don't mind, I'd like to play a brief 1-minute video. One more try. It's funny, it worked when I got here. Yeah, it's okay. We'll move on. Thank you. My iSmartStep is a monitoring and biofeedback system for gait training and retraining of the brain to restore functional abilities following an orthopedic or neurological trauma. It is durable medical equipment as it can withstand repeated use, serves a medical purpose, and is useful to those with illness or injury. Most importantly, it is optimal for use in the home and has interactive accessibility for home use through web-based software programs for the patient on an iPhone, PC, or iPad. And although the My iSmartStep is used in the home for 75% of cases, it does have secondary use in a rehabilitation facility and/or a home skilled nursing setting. Excuse me. We know from the studies shown that the My iSmartStep is optimal for prescribed weight-bearing program outcomes. The study shown illustrates 42 patients using the My iSmartStep, resulting in improvement in proper weight-bearing, standing tests, walking tests, and step tests. Among the population, the current prescribed uses for full or partial weight-bearing programs include common procedures such as orthopedic surgeries, post-amputation gait training, stroke rehabilitation, and the like, which are all shown here. As a gait training utilizing biofeedback, it's important to consider the role that biofeedback plays in compliance and retention. The study on the left shows that compliance to the desired target weight is achieved with more accuracy using biofeedback versus the use of verbal or scale techniques. We also see on the right that we achieve 24-hour retention with proper weight bearing, which indicates a durable effect with biofeedback technology versus the standard verbal or scale techniques. We believe there are very large populations that regularly receive weight-bearing instructions that would benefit from improvement and compliance with weight-bearing in their rehabilitation. Every year in the United States, 258,000 people suffer from hip fractures, more than 5 million ankle fractures, and approximately 8% of Medicare beneficiaries show incidence of diabetic foot ulcers, with just under 2% of that population requiring amputation. At present, gait retraining for these conditions is done with physical therapists, which is time-consuming, expensive, and often shows poor results, whereas biofeedback offers continuous feedback and facilitates compliance. Statistics related to incidents and problems assisted with PT gait retraining demonstrates a compelling programmatic need for the My iSmartStep in the home. This is addressed more specifically in subsequent slides. Now we'd like to illustrate our rationale for the My iSmartStep HCPCS code development. Officially, Andante disagrees with the preliminary decision regarding the lack of national program operating need. The technology meets CMS criteria for HCPCS DME code development because it is available for commercial use through FDA clearance and prescribed as durable medical equipment as per the section described in 1861 of the Social Security Act. Lastly, no existing HCPCS code accurately describes the technology, and current codes are limited to non-biofeedback, pediatric gait trainers or are individualized to each patient, and those codes do not reference software support or monitoring. Moreover, providers would currently bill for the iSmartStep using a miscellaneous HCPCS code such as E1399. We believe the compelling programmatic need is for accurate claims processing with the iSmartStep. Since we received our 510K in 2006, we have sold 150 units in the United States. And our current CPT code, which is assigned to the iSmartStep, allows for reporting in a clinical use or the use of the PT's time. But home use and to report the patient's purchase or rental to a third-party payer requires a HCPCS code. Most importantly, since 2011, 670 iSmartSteps have been prescribed for home use. But since a HCPCS code did not exist, the patient could not receive them. Essentially, the iSmartStep has strong unmet demand because there is no accurate way to report the claims. We'd like to summarize our rationale to HCPCS code development. The unmet demand accentuates the compelling programmatic need. Current HCPCS codes for DME gait training are limited to non-biofeedback, pediatric use, or individual programs that make no reference to software or monitoring. In the clinical setting at present, the CPT code offered is used by the provider to report his or her time and not the utilization or the purchase or rental of a specific device. A iSmartStep device used in the home would currently be reported to insurers with a miscellaneous HCPCS code, as mentioned, such as E1399. Essentially, no existing permanent HCPCS code defines the iSmartStep. Finally, we believe that the iSmartStep meets the requirements for new code development. The code description noted here would accurately report the home use of a gait trainer with monitoring and biofeedback software and a pressure sensing insole system for gait training therapy and muscle re-education of weight-bearing skills, including all accessories and components. None of the current HCPCS codes available, which are noted here, report a system utilized by adults to sense weight applied to the plantar surface of the foot during rehabilitation while providing feedback to the patient. Thank you so much for listening, and we appreciate your time.
Okay, we'll hear from a 5-minute speaker, Mr. Jonathan Grauer.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Grauer. I'm an associate professor of orthopedics at Yale University School of Medicine, Department of Orthopedics and Rehabilitation. As means of disclosure, I have done research with the SmartStep device. This is a device that I purchased at market value. I got no support through my research from the company, and my only involvement in consulting was in preparation and coming for this meeting. So as I say, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I routinely take care of people with orthopedic injuries. Both me and my colleagues routinely prescribe weight-bearing restrictions for patients, and we routinely put a lot of effort into establishing compliance for this. There's a firm belief that some weight-bearing is very good for stimulating bone formation, and too much can lead to failure of alignment or surgical constructs. So I did a series of studies that clearly showed that we could improve initial and maintain compliance with weight bearing by using a biofeedback system such as the one that is the abilities offered by SmartStep device. And so we did find that we could improve the targeting, and we could also establish things better than we did with traditional training methods such as using a bathroom scale or physical therapist time. And this was efficient both for the resource utilization and achieving our target goals. So overall, I find there's clear advantage for a very large potential set of patients. We look at patients ranging from routine young patients with ankle fractures to geriatric patients with hip fractures, and many more that are given routine weight-bearing restrictions. The lack of the specific coding for this device limits the ability to precisely code and effectively charge for the SmartStep device, and the lack of the code effectively limits patient access to what I do think is of sufficient and significant clinical care. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments regarding this item? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. They were great. That's your audio, and that's mine. Thank you.
Agenda item number 2, attachment 15.68, request to establish a unique Level 2 HCPCS code to identify gait lift assistance device, trade name Grip and Assist Belt. There are no speakers for this item. Are there any questions or comments? Agenda item number 3, attachment number 15.5, request to establish a unique Level 2 HCPCS code to identify a portable tabletop arm rehabilitation device, trade name Tailwind. Primary speaker, Kristen Apple.
Good morning. My name is Chris Appel, and I'm the founder of Encore, which I created to bring the Tailwind technology to market. I was the first investor in the company. The Tailwind is a bilateral device with rhythmic auditory cueing that is used for recovery of arm movement in patients with stroke or brain injury. I want to thank you for inviting me here to talk to you today. We'd like to respectfully disagree with the decision to classify the Tailwind as an exercise device, and I'd like to give you a little bit of background on that. So, the Tailwind is indeed durable medical equipment. It is used exclusively to serve a medical purpose. It is not used in the absence of an illness or injury. Also, it does not work to strengthen muscles. It works by a combination of movements done to the rhythm of an auditory cue, which results in motor cortex activation. The device has no resistance to it, so it is not intended for strength training. If there is any strength improvement, it's merely a byproduct of the device itself, and that strength training has no associated neuromuscular principles. Although several rehab centers have purchased the Tailwind, the overwhelming use of the Tailwind is at home. Many users have used the Tailwind for 3 years or more, sometimes after a second stroke occurs. And again, it is never used in the absence of a stroke or brain injury. So, what are its outcomes? The Tailwind has been proven in numerous studies to help stroke patients with hemiparesis, paralysis on one side of the body, improve their arm function. And over 80% of people who have a stroke are going to suffer some measure of arm deficit. There are 5 million people living in the US today with stroke, and there are about 800,000 new strokes every year. Improving arm function in stroke survivors isn't just about activities of daily living, although that's extremely important, but studies show that people who regain arm function after stroke have better balance, they have fewer falls, they can handle stairs better, and they have a lower rate of reinstitutionalization after stroke. Studies have shown that the Tailwind in particular causes increased motor cortex activation, whether it's used alone or in combination with other devices. Because the Tailwind provides this unique combination of controlled repetitive arm movement with auditory cueing, this combination entrains neuromuscular pathways responsible for arm movement. So why are we asking for a HCPCS code? We believe the Tailwind meets the CMS criteria for a code because it is exclusively medical in nature. Again, it's never used in the absence of a stroke or brain injury. And it is indeed durable medical equipment. No current code adequately describes the product. There are no HCPCS codes to describe the Tailwind's unique combination of features which entrain neuromuscular pathways. Current codes are limited to devices for a single joint or a single body part, while the Tailwind provides neuromuscular training, resulting in improvement of the entire extremity. Also, CPT codes denote provider time in training, so when a user is using it in a hospital or rehabilitation facility, there's a CPT code, but again, the vast majority of users are using the device at home. Furthermore, the existing code A9300 for exercise equipment doesn't arm. Again, that would only be a byproduct, and that's not the intention or use of the device. It only works through increased motor cortex activation. Through neurofunctional couplings, the Tailwind is able to improve arm function in patients with stroke or other brain injury. Code A9300 includes products intended solely as strength and exercise equipment that have no neuromuscular component. Why is there a programmatic need? As I mentioned earlier, there are over 5 million Americans living with stroke, and another 800,000 strokes are added to that every year, not to mention the number of TBI patients in the US. The fastest growing age group for stroke is under age 54. I get calls every week from people who want to purchase the Tailwind. However, recovering from a stroke can be financially devastating, so it's unaffordable for most. Over the past 3 years, an average of only 7.1% of the people who called me were able to purchase the device. So we believe that a new code that describes the Tailwind is needed. There is no existing code that meets that need. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay.
Agenda item number 4, attachment 15.95, third request to establish 2 unique level 2 HCPCS codes to identify BalanceWear 300 full torso device and the BalanceWear 500 device. There is no primary speaker and no 5-minute speakers. Are there any questions or comments? Agenda item number 5, attachment 15.103. Repeat request to establish a unique level 2 HCPCS code to identify mechanical advantage extremity mobilization. Primary speaker, Thomas Johnston.
Good morning, and I would like to thank everyone for this opportunity to speak with the panel today. And it's been many years I've been trying to be here. I've been turned down 3 times, and For today, the chief points, this is my company, and I do have financial interests in my company, and I do respectfully disagree with the preliminary decision that my device is exercise equipment. The two chief points that I probably would like to make today is, first, I would like to just demonstrate my device. It's very obvious this is not exercise equipment because it does not provide any resistance whatsoever. Actually, it provides the exact opposite. If you're struggling with range of motion in your knee joint, you need a device to help break down the scar tissue that provides assistance, the exact opposite of exercise equipment. This provides no resistance at all. And the other chief point is I think all these years, the reason why it's been hard for me to get approval to use an existing code, I believe the existing code is one of the E1810 and E1811. It's a static, progressive knee stretching device. But Dr. Shelbourne, I've been very much a big part of his program. He's a very famous orthopedic surgeon in Indianapolis at Methodist Sports Medicine Hospital. He still uses my devices. I have devices that also bend the knee. This one is to straighten the knee. So I have been a very big part of his program for many years. He's approved my device, but in the last 10 years, he's invented his own device, and that device has been approved by Medicare. He has been given the code to use on his device. So I thought today maybe what would make a difference if I can show you how you would allow me to piggyback his research. If I show you how our devices perform the exact same function, that would be helpful because you've already approved his research and approved his device with the code. The other thing that's worth mentioning too is there's a big clinic in Dubuque, and that physical therapist contacted me years ago when Dr. Shelbourne's device was approved and told me that he did all the research and the research is available, because I was always under the impression without research that was hurting me, and as being such a small company I could never do research. So with the research being done, he was hoping that this would be more cost effective. He says, TJ, the baby boomer generation, they're coming in here, total knee patients all day long. I've got a dozen patients a day lining up to use your knee extension device. He said they can't afford to rent the device. They don't have insurance to pay out of the pocket for Dr. Shelbourne's device is very costly per month. He says, I would like my patients just to be able to purchase this device, because this is long-term stretching. And after they get done with their left knee, most of them, it's arthritis, they have to do the next leg the next year. We would just like to purchase this device for your patients. So that's why I'm here today. If I can show you that how our devices perform the exact same function to press down and straighten that knee, it's static and progressive, that this would help you, help me, be able to use this code. I'll show you, I'll demonstrate my device right now for you. My leg is no way. It's weak, bad range of motion. I'm getting desperate now. All of a sudden it came to me. I can stretch myself every day at home. If I can take that pulley system, that little block and tackle off my sail, and somehow hook it to my leg, now I've got the mechanical advantage of a pulley system, right? The purchase power. I can stretch, I can make myself independent of the physical therapist. I can stretch 2 or 3 times a day now at home. It worked. The first device was very crude, believe me. But I was able to, I work, I got it all day long. 2 or 3 times a day, I'm hooking myself up. My problem more back then was with my flexion device, which I don't have here, was the bend my knee. 2 or 3 times a day now, I can, and it's got to be a slow, progressive stretch. When I read all the research papers on scar tissue, the force has to be static and progressive. The force has to be pushed down with a pulley system. Just pulling on a towel or belt just for 30 seconds on and off is not going to do it. That's what my device does. It's going to press down. You see how the pulley system works, and it locks out. It holds all the power, making it so easy for patients to do this now. It locks out, and then within your pain tolerance, within every few minutes, you lift up and you tighten it down just a little bit more. So over a 12 to 15 minute period, you're breaking down that scar tissue. Scar tissue is very resistant to stretching. It's got a plastic property and it has tremendous memory. Usually by the time you get done stretching, by the time you drive home from the clinic, it's hard to get out of the car and it's already gone back. So it's got to be done every day. Let me show you how my pulley system works now. It's a very, very simple device. Most patients have difficulty getting in, so all you do is that little leg support pulls out of the way. This is just to hold the leg in a horizontal position while you stretch. Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Once the harness is in position, it's very comfortable. It spreads the force out over a large area. There's a hole for the kneecap because you don't want to press down the kneecap. Once you start to tighten up the pulley system, so you start to feel a little pain and resistance, the handle just locks out. Here's the pulley system doing all the bulwark for you. You lock it out. Plug the handle back in. Now, hands-free, you can be on your computer, you can be on the phone, you can be watching Good Morning America. This is doing all the bulwark. After 2 or 3 minutes, you feel this pain diminish. And by the way, it's very safe. You have to use your own tolerance for pain to tell you when to stretch, when to put more force on your knee. After a few minutes, you can probably see it when I pull up. You see how the pulleys are shortening, pushing down. Push down until it hurts again. Lock it out. It's holding all that force, doing all the work for patients. What happened was, after I designed that initial device, in 5 to 6 weeks of stretching 2 or 3 times a day, I had my range of motion back and I was able to go back to work. By having this device in the home, I was able to accomplish in 5 to 6 weeks with 5 to 6 months of only 3 times of stretching a week to do. And I sold it everywhere in Western New York. All the physical therapy clinics bought this because it worked so well. When I left it for 30 days free trial, everyone bought it. And everyone used it in the clinic. My struggle right now is I don't want this to go home with patients. That's what you need. You need this device in the home and stretch on a daily basis. And without the billing code, I cannot get it to go home with people. That's where I'm struggling in the business world. The physical therapist will not send this home. I'm hoping with the code, I can get this in the hands of patients to take it home and reduce 5 or 6 months of physical therapy down to 5 or 6 weeks for everybody. Huge cost savings all the way around, even for me. You got to work for all those months and all the co-pays. This device has huge potential, and those baby boomers are coming in by the boatloads right now. It's our generation, it's my generation. So there's a great need for this right now to help people and to save costs and to save money. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate this opportunity. Are there any questions?
Okay, we have a 5-minute speaker before we get to your questions there. Mr. Yogi Schiller.
I'm not a Yankees fan. I like the Nationals. Glad you guys probably like Baltimore. But my name's Peter Yogi Schiller. I'm a associate of Tom Johnson. And Tom has been talking about many years he spent in trying to get his code approved, and it's just been a real blessing for you folks to allow him to come and present here today. I think Tom has demonstrated the fact that this is not exercise equipment. Basically what it does is it breaks down scar tissue. And that's a medical piece of equipment. That's number one. Number two, it will save Medicaid thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars by allowing this to be used, certainly in clinics, which it is being used, but also bringing home to the patients. Dr. Shelbourne's own research states that a large percentage of people, instead of having an 8-week rehabilitation, it reduced it. This is in-house or in therapy in the therapist's office. It's reduced it by 25%. That's big in by itself. His research also states that approximately 10% of people will not even need therapy or not even need a knee replacement. Costs approximately $40,000 to $60,000. So not only does this benefit the patient, it benefits definitely the patient, but it also benefits the government tremendously by reducing the out-of-pocket costs for rehabilitation. So are there any questions for Tom?
I have one question. Is this a purchase item? Does the patient purchase it, or does it come back to your company refurbished and then sent out to another patient?
Well, there is an orthopedic, there's a Ryan Pharmacy Orthopedic Supply in Ohio who's been doing this for about 23 years. They refurbish it and send it back out. I myself, I'm just the designer and the manufacturer, so I don't really get involved that much with patients. But I see the cost effectiveness would probably be in the purchase of the device, because this is long-term stretching, long-term, especially with the baby boomers with arthritis. They've got terrible range of motion before they even go into surgery, because for years they've been limping. And even though you put a replacement joint in there, all the connective tissue on each side has been very shortened over the years of limping and waiting and prolonging the surgery. So the total knee patients have a lot of problems. A lot of doctors will have them use my harness for 2 or 3 months before the replacement surgery, because they get half of the bulwark done even before surgery, because they're in such bad shape, you know. And then after surgery, it's going to be months. It's painful. It's long. Not everybody's the same. Some are more difficult than others. But then again, within another year or two, sometimes it's the other knee. So probably from a cost-effective point of view, like my therapist in Iowa was saying, TJ, you know, these patients, a lot of them don't have any insurance coverage. It would be better for them just to purchase this out of pocket and then have it for the long term.
And we're willing to do either. We're willing to rent it. We're willing to purchase it. We're basically here just to get it approved, and then whatever marketing has to happen in order to get it to the customers for a reasonable price, that's something that we will do. From what we understand, Dr. Shelbourne's device runs about $900 a month. We're not going to be in that range at all, but we're going to be super duper effective. We're going to be lower than that for sure, both selling it and renting it. And we understand that Dr. Shelbourne's device might not be available for sale. Might be, might not be. We don't think so. But he just rents it. But he still has a very good unit.
Well, I know what I forgot to mention. I did pass out at the very end. There's a little picture of Dr. Shelbourne's device. And what his device is, the reason why ours function the same, instead of using a pulley system, what he's done is he has a little ratcheting wheel with a geared wheel, like similar to like a little boat hoist when you ratchet your boat back on the trailer. It's a little ratcheting wheel. And he has a handle associated with that. And what he does is when you ratchet and turn the wheel, a steel cable pulls down on 2 straps. In the picture, you'll see a strap below the knee and a strap above the knee. So it performs the same function, but it didn't violate my patent because it's a ratcheting winch. It's a little spool. The cable winds around, it pulls down on the belts, and it's just pulling down and forcing the knee straight. just a different mechanical system rather than a pulley system or ratcheting winch. But they both do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? We thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Agenda item number 6, attachment 15.107, request to establish a unique level 2 HCPCS code to identify the X10 pressure modulated knee rehabilitation machine. Primary speaker is Kate Remus.
We're going to have better luck with the video this time. Felix and I practiced beforehand. Yeah, it's not even, I think he has to switch the input, but it looks like Felix isn't back there. Brilliant. Slideshow. All right, thank you. My name is Catherine Remus, and I am President and Chief Operating Officer of Halley Orthopedics. Together with the co-founders, Dr. David Halley and Paul Ewing, we would like to thank the committee for the opportunity to come here today and the opportunity to address you and share our view of the desperate need and importance of creating a unique HCPCS code for the X10 pressure modulated knee rehabilitation machine. We've reviewed the committee's preliminary recommendation and respectfully disagree with the committee. In the next 15 minutes, what I'd like to do is share some new information and insights based on patients that have been treated since our application was submitted. These patients benefited from PMKR therapy because of Blue Cross Blue Shield's coverage decision for this device as durable medical equipment and for short-term post-operative use for knee replacement patients. However, before I begin, I want to share a brief video as a way to introduce you to the device itself, as well as the patients, therapists, and orthopedic surgeons who benefited from this technology.
X10 affords patients the opportunity to get on and quickly mobilize that joint. It's a great tool that patients have access to, and they've used it 2 to 3, 4 times a day, and we see a difference in the recovery in those patients. They're enjoying the challenge of increasing the range on their own. I'm seeing a better compliance with them with this program, and the outcomes are very good.
Pushing with the X10 was like having a physical therapist there 3 extra times a day. And I think that was really key to helping me progress to where I am now, where I have pretty close to full extension and about 124 degrees of flexion. And it's 2.5 weeks after the surgery.
You get more and more bend, you get more and more bend. And it was just amazing how quickly that came back. And I avoided having more surgery because of that.
The process in the body in which you start to have swelling in the joint creates a situation in which the brain turns off the neurological connection from the brain to the motor end plate units of that muscle, you have to reestablish that connection. If you reestablish that connection early, then rehab is cut and you're back to your normal daily activities.
There's no question that the first 2 weeks is when you have to break up the scar tissue, pump the fluid out, get your knee moving. And most people don't do that in the first 2 weeks. And if you go to the third week, even doctors who don't use this have told me that by the third week the fluid builds up and the scarring builds up, and if you don't get it out or to get it moving, you're going to end up with trouble for a long time.
The therapist came right in with it, sat me down, programmed it, and started. I love this. This is rotating my leg that I couldn't do myself. And when my husband came home, he had 2 hip replacements, said, what did they, how come I didn't get something like that? I said, I guess it's with Dr. Meisel's program. When I would go to therapy, she said, something has brought your leg so close to your back that you aren't having no problem. I said, well, that machine. If I didn't have that machine, I honestly don't believe I think I could have healed as fast and been on my feet as fast.
Pressure modulated knee rehabilitation machines are used in the immediate postoperative rehab of patients recovering from knee replacement. In 2015, the United States will spend more than $25 billion on the estimated 1 million surgeries that take place, mostly among the 65 and older population. The incidence of this procedure is growing at a rate of more than 15% every year. However, patient satisfaction is suboptimal and outcomes vary considerably. This is the unmet need that PMKR machines were designed to address. PMKR machines combine 3 things: effective technology, medical oversight, and engaged, empowered patients, which together create superior outcomes. The committee's preliminary decision was to classify X10 as A9300, or exercise equipment, a classification that includes tools like those that you see on the screen. When we looked for commonalities in these code sets, we saw that they don't serve a medical purpose and are used independently by patients without clinical supervision. In preparation for this meeting, we then talked to the more than 30 orthopedic surgeons in the Detroit area that have prescribed X10 for their post-op patients and asked them how we should explain and differentiate X10 relative to exercise equipment. 3 themes emerged. First is that pressure-modulated knee rehab is a novel technology that solves a medical problem. Secondly, effective use of this technology requires clinical oversight and guidance that's now possible because of the onboard computer and telemedicine components of the machine. Finally, this device is a tool that helps surgeons transform and improve the current standard of care. So let's start with the medical problem. Today, it takes a great deal of time and resources for patients to achieve 110 degrees range of motion, which is a benchmark that enables safe, normal activities of daily living. In 2014, the Cochrane collaboration published a meta-analysis of more than 1,400 patients that investigated the efficacy of CPM machines. These data show no statistical difference between patients that use CPM machines and those that did not, but for us, it also created a baseline trajectory for knee replacement patients, that it takes on average 6 months to achieve that 110-degree benchmark. In contrast, you'll see that X10 accelerates the recovery and rapidly restores range of motion for post-op patients. Within 3 weeks of surgery, X10 patients exceed the 6-month standard of care benchmarks, resulting in shorter episodes and superior surgical outcomes with less variability. In our application, we extensively detailed the way in which the X10's unique mechanism of action helps prevent the formation of scar tissue, helping patients more rapidly regain flexibility. But there's another ingredient to PMKR's success, and that's patient compliance. Because the X10 is able to collect and transmit real-time data from the point of care, we're able to monitor and quantify patient compliance. The in-home device is intended to be used by patients 3 times a day for 3 30-minute sessions. And when we looked at the number of missed days, again, that 7 days a week protocol among patients, we saw that their compliance was in excess of 93%. So clearly, giving patients a tool that works and provides them with immediate real-time feedback is a very powerful motivator that empowers patients to take control of their own recovery. The ability to track and see daily progress in patients also allowed us to look at patterns by starting class. This graph shows patients' average daily range of motion by start group. And I want to point out two things. First of all, the data converge. All patients are successful at achieving full functional range of motion within 1 month. Secondly, the patients who start the lowest, and for many orthopedic surgeons are the most problematic and concerning patients that may have to ultimately have a manipulation or revision surgery, are the patients who, in fact, with X10, make the most significant gains. This reduces complication rates and helps avoid long-term problems for patient recovery. Additionally, PMKR therapy is incredibly efficient intervention. Unlike exercise equipment that's chronically used for lifelong health and well-being, the average X10 patient needs the machine for less than 3 weeks. The chart on the screen right now shows the percent of patients remaining on the machine and still utilizing the machine during the first 30 days of in-home use. PMKR is not a one-size-fits-all therapy. Because we can track and monitor and see patients' progression, we put the power of making individualized discharge decisions into the hands of clinicians. So doctors and therapists are now able to make discharge decisions based on objective data, which we believe is a game changer. Patients and therapists are able to monitor progress and set discharge hurdles based on results and real-time feedback. We also learned several other important things during our work with knee patients in the last 5 months. We have sufficient data to categorize patients by BMI class and to look for patterns in both patients' weight and age. Surprisingly, we didn't find any patterns. And I want to pause on this point because for most orthopedic surgeons we've partnered with, this is remarkable. As with most things in medicine, patients' weight in BMI is a significant complicating factor in knee patient recovery. It's very difficult for heavier patients to bend and move their legs, and lack of good circulation and movement can lead to other serious complications and deficits in flexibility and muscle strength. Similarly, there was no difference in the progress and rate of recovery for patients by age. Patients who are less than 65 progress just as effectively as patients over 75. We believe that this consistency of recovery is a powerful tool in the hands of clinicians. Finally, many of the surgeons prescribing X10 have begun to experiment with new treatment protocols that improve the quality of care while utilizing more efficient resources. This last graph shows the range of motion progression for patients who utilize X10 in the home with or without adjunctive home care. What you'll see is that well-trained patients who use the machine supported by remote monitoring and telemedicine actually do better than those who have additional in-home therapy. As Carl said in the video, one of the patients that spoke in that video, working with X10 is like having a therapist in your home for an extra 3 times a day. Most of these X10 patients don't need the extra cost and complexity of home care services and a skilled person coming into their home. And we're optimistic that data like this may help surgeons and healthcare systems use PMKR therapy to improve the quality of care while lowering costs. We want to thank you for your time today and the opportunity to share these new data with you. We hope that you see the uniqueness and clinical advantage of X10 PMKR and recognize the possibilities that this breakthrough could have for the healthcare system.
I'd like to call our first 5-minute speaker, Dr. David Haley.
My name is David Halley, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer and partner of Halley Orthopedics, the manufacturer of the X10 rehabilitation device. My private joint replacement practice began in 1975 after a fellowship with Sir John Charnley, the inventor of total hip replacement. Because of his success that dramatically helped humanity, he was knighted by the Queen of England. I believe the X10 represents a similar game-changing potential that the advent of total hip replacement had on the treatment of arthritis. Paul Ewing and I began work on this new rehabilitation tool because of the significant unmet need among knee patients. Despite significant advances in surgical techniques and implant design, there continues to be a wide variation in the quality of patient outcomes, due in part to postoperative rehabilitation and significant patient dissatisfaction. To understand the X10, one must understand the pathophysiology of scar tissue formation that limits motion of the knee. This process can begin within hours after surgery as a result of bleeding. Within a day, edema of the soft tissue forms as a result of mediators released from the platelets, causing nearby vessels to dilate and leak plasma into the surrounding soft tissue, leading to stiffening of the joint. This fluid must be removed within 2 weeks, or granulation tissue begins to form. As granulation tissue hardens, it becomes thick, hard scar, which limits motion. At this point, the only possible treatment that might help is manipulation of the knee under anesthesia, that is, bending the knee with its associated potential complications, or actual revision surgery. The number one goal for postoperative knee patients is to remove fluid from the joint in order to restore range of motion and prevent the formation of scar tissue. The fluid is removed by repeated flexion and extension of the knee that causes a sinusoidal pressure in the knee, leading to a pumping effect which clears the blood and fluid from the knee. This must be done very soon after surgery. The problem is it is very painful for the patient, and it's not well tolerated. To increase the range of motion, therapists have had to move the leg to its limits and then push beyond. Despite their best intentions, this therapy, even in the hands of the most skilled therapist, can still result in sharp pain. Pain leads to more swelling and can exacerbate the formation of scar tissue. It also makes patients fear rehabilitation and become non-compliant. Historically, the only tool available was continuous passive motion, or the CPM machines. Unfortunately, these machines are painful for patients, difficult to use properly, and offer no feedback. Furthermore, the research on these machines is conclusive. Use of a CPM machine does not improve patients' range of motion. In contrast, the mechanics of pressure-modulated knee rehabilitation machines are unique. The X10 is an interactive, biofeedback modulated rehabilitation tool that slowly and gently engages the knee joint's natural pump mechanism to help reduce swelling and rapidly restore range of motion. The technology of the X10 provides for flexion and extension of the knee just below the patient's pain threshold. This is key, and it leads to a quicker and more successful recovery. The X10 is individualized to each patient and ensures that the movement always remains below each patient's unique pain threshold while progressively increasing flexibility. Furthermore, the ability to move at a slow speed, particularly at the end range, allows fluid more readily to leave the joint. Throughout the therapy process, the surgeon-patient relationship should be maintained. Now, this has not always been the case, but with the X10, with computerized documentation of each sequence of motion, the patient's progress or lack of progress can be identified immediately and changes can be made so as to prevent complications. This saves money. Also, if the patient has a rapid recovery and needs no further treatment, therapy can be discontinued early, again saving money for the system. I want to point out the name X10 initially was designed to prevent flexion contractures, and it's very effective in getting the knee out completely. However, in addition, we've added the flexion component. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I do have a question. In April of 2013, your company submitted an application to the PDAC for a Model X10. Are you telling me that this is not the same model that was?
That's correct. This is a new model that includes both the flexibility and strengthening components and some of the biofeedback elements. So the software and the hardware itself has been dramatically changed to incorporate more modalities. That application was made when we were just simply a probably 300-pound bigger machine used in outpatient clinics.
So it's not the same machine?
It's not the same.
Okay.
Hi, I have a question. When the device is initially delivered to the home, how much time, what's the delivery process like? Is there an attendant there for
Absolutely.
30 minutes or an hour?
I'll let you finish. Yeah, the delivery process, we bring the equipment into the patient's home and request that a caregiver and patient are both in attendance. We spend on average an hour to an hour and a half with patients and their caregivers during that setup phase. And in many cases, we're doing that the day or two before they leave for the hospital so that we're able to train them prior to surgery. We also, because of the ability to see real-time data, can track compliance and progress and have a HIPAA-compliant cloud-based monitoring system on an Oracle database that lets us see how patients are doing. And if there are lack of compliance or lack of progression, there are different flags that surgeons and therapists use to signal patients that we need to make direct outreach to. This is not something that we drop off and let the patient use independently. The doctor-patient relationship, as Dr. Halley pointed out, is kind of critical to how this is used and engaged in the home.
Can you please hold your question? We have a couple more 5-minute speakers, if you don't mind. Okay.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Paul Ewing.
Hi, good morning. My name is Paul Ewing, and I'm the inventor of the X10 technology. And together with Dr. Halley and I, we are partners in Halley Orthopedics. Now, having someone bend your leg back and forth a few days after part of your leg bones have been cut in half is not a lot of fun. This pain can be excruciating, it comes out of nowhere, and it can really zing you. People hate it. Now, CPMs were invented about 30 years ago and were supposed to restore the patient's range of motion. They are considered a medical device, and they were in the patient's homes for 3 to 4 weeks. Until recently, no one really knew for sure if using a CPM was effective, nor even how often it was being used, if it was at all. People hate CPM machines. When preparing for his second knee surgery, Steve Lopez, sports writer for the LA Times, said in an article, "What I dread more than surgery is having to strap my leg into that continuous passive motion machine for 6 hours a day while you're flat on your back, staring at the ceiling. The monotonous machine bends your leg, it straightens your leg, bend, straighten, 6 hours of this. The police should strap suspects into these things. They'll confess to anything." Okay, this machine, the miracle of our X10 technology, has changed all of this. And I mean, it has changed all of it. People now love bending their leg back and forth. After proper training, people want to do it for 3 30-minute sessions a day in their own home, eating in their own food and sleeping in their own bed. What changed? Why? Because it doesn't hurt, and it makes amazing progress. As the doctor in the first video said, everyone knows the first weeks are the secret to healing. But you have to look deeper. Okay, why doesn't it hurt? And why do patients get such amazing results? And why do patients have over 90% compliance? The answer, you have to look at the U.S. Patent Office. The U.S. Patent Office issued the X10 a method patent, not a machine patent, a method patent. Method patent is a very specific term. It refers to a unique way to use a product to accomplish a given result. The X10 PMKR operates in a fundamentally different method from any prior approach. And there is no HCPCS code that describes this fundamentally different method of removing fluid from the knee and unlocking the results that we have shown you earlier. This was confirmed again when, after months of trying, a committee of Blue Cross Blue Shield failed to identify any HCPCS code that could be used for the X10, and they spent a lot of time and money trying to identify one. It was at their urging that we are here today. But achieving success requires more than just a machine and a fundamentally different way of doing things. Thanks to the magic of computers and telemedicine, patients know that people who really care about them, family, doctors, and therapists, are watching and are supporting them. As NASA has shown us, a support team is essential for mission success. For many patients, it has now been months or even a few years since they have recovered using the X10. These former X10 patients and doctors know that a decision is being made here today in Baltimore. They wonder, will others in the future have the same advantage I had, and ask what they can do to support our cause. They've become passionate activists, sending postcards and emails to Cynthia Hake. I think you've received some. Some of them are overly long, I know. I saw one that was 2 single-space pages. It was a long read. Okay. These people have become passionate, and okay. The letters of support to demonstrate to us that we have improved their lives. Finally, in the next few years, the number of total knee replacements will increase exponentially, and the majority of them will fall within the Medicare demographic. The X10 will enhance the quality of patient care, surgical outcomes, and patient satisfaction, all at a reduced cost. Medicare patients should not be denied access to this technology. I urge the committee to reconsider your decision and to establish a unique HCPCS code for the X10 PMKR machine. They're providing Medicare patients the highest quality of care currently available and making substandard care a thing of the past. Thank you very much.
Our next 5-minute speaker is Dr. Carl Freeman.
Hi, I'm Carl Freeman. I am a professor of biology and biostatistics at Wayne State University. I'm also a clinical research fellow at the DeClaire Lamontregue Orthopedic Institute in Rochester Hills, Michigan. I have received no compensation from Halley Orthopedics. I'm also a knee patient, and I know firsthand the pain and difficulties in the rehabilitation process. Over the past 45 years, I've had more than 20 knee surgeries, and I really wish I had had an X10 at my disposal. Today, I want to share with the committee the findings I've seen in research undertaken with the X10 pressure-modulated knee rehabilitation device. For more than 30 years, I have engaged in a number of orthopedic research projects, all of which have been published in peer-reviewed journals. Most recently, I teamed up with Dr. Paul Rubel, who is a physical therapist with a PhD in anatomy, to study the outcomes of the X10 and the CPM machine. The results of our findings have been submitted to the journal Clinical Orthopedics and Related Research. And it's those results that make me so enthusiastic about this machine. When we compared the patients who used the X10 and those who used the CPM, there's simply no real comparison. The mechanisms in the machine are radically different. The outcomes are radically different. No longer must patients wait 6 months to achieve a range of motion that enables them to go up and down stairs, to drive themselves and regain much of their normal life. Now it's possible on average to achieve a range of motion that allows all of these activities of daily life in 3 weeks under the guidance of health professionals. The large majority of X10 patients safely gain 5 to 10 degrees range of motion per day. This rapidity of progress is one of the reasons that we have over 90% compliance. The patients see the good results. So we wanted to publish this because the results were spectacular, and we wanted to inform the orthopedic community of a better way of rehabilitation. I also work with Dr. Jeffrey DeClaire, one of the finest and most prolific orthopedic surgeons in Michigan, and we've worked on a variety of projects, and recently that included his participation in X10 research. Dr. DeClaire is the inventor of a cruciate-saving ligament artificial knee, which is produced by Zimmer. And he is at the forefront of international research, and today is at an international research conference in Japan, which is why he's not here. Dr. DeClaire always tries to use best practices, and accordingly, for years, his patients routinely used a CPM. Now, when he became aware of the X10, he began to experiment with new post-operative rehabilitation protocols, and I worked with him to study this. I have examined his pre- and post-operative data on more than 2,000 patients, and we have compared those results with his patients who've used the X10. There is simply no comparison. Patients take weeks off the time it takes them to reach 90 or 110 degrees range of motion. Prior to the X10, it took much longer for these patients to reach these milestones that are crucial for the demands of daily living. This delay was particularly acute for morbidly obese patients who routinely lagged 2 to 3 weeks behind in their recovery compared to their peers. But with the X10, there is no difference. Above all, what I want you to understand is that this device truly delivers a higher quality of patient care. This is evidence-based medicine at its best. It does so safely, and it does so less expensively than the current standard of care. Thank you.
Our last 5-minute speaker, Dr. David Maggi.
Good morning. My name is Dr. David Maggi. I am the Specialist in Chief at the Detroit Medical Center. I am also Professor and Chairman at Michigan State University. I'd like to close that I have no relationship financially with Haley Orthopedics and am receiving no compensation for my presentation with you today. I am also grateful to the committee for allowing me to address you and share my impressions and support of this request. As a former professional ski racer and a knee patient, I have personally experienced the pain, the reduced productivity caused by the lengthy rehabilitation process. Without good range of motion and strength, patients cannot return to work or normal activities of daily life. Conventional physical therapy, as we've learned by other speakers and other presenters today, may take as long as 6 months or more to achieve these outcomes. In contrast, patients who have had the advantage of using the X10 can return to work and normal daily activities within 1 month. I am sorry that the X10 was not available to me when I was a patient. The introduction of pressure modulated knee rehabilitation enables a fundamental shift in the model for post-operative physical therapy. Think about it. What has really changed in the rehabilitation process using physical therapy in the last 25 years? No substantial modification of standard techniques have been presented. Manual physical therapy can be painful. It is time-consuming, it is expensive, and it is slow. As the recent Cochrane study has shown us, and this is the gold standard based on evidence-based medicine, CPM machines are ineffective. As a system, we invest tremendous amounts of money in knee replacement procedures, but gaps still remain in the post-operative care, which contributes equally to the surgery's ultimate success. It is clear to all in the medical profession that we must begin to adapt new technology and tools that improve the quality of care while controlling and reducing unnecessary cost. We need to be cost responsible. This is a topic of conversation and debate at every national and every international meeting I attend. To do so in a responsible manner requires individualized decision-making driven by objective data and clinical evidence. One of the most striking elements of PMKR machine is the ability to track progress and monitor compliance without having costly therapist resources in the patient's home or in a physical therapy clinic. Tools like the PMKR machine allow payers and health systems like CMS to break the model of one-size-fits-all. This episodic care where patients are treated as long as authorized sessions remain will continue unless we think about this differently. In my home state of Michigan, why has Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Michigan adopted PMKR? It's simple. It works. Their decision has led to better outcomes, to higher patient satisfaction, and lower cost. Use of the PMKR in the immediate postoperative period reduces potential and possible complications. It accelerates healing and improves surgical outcomes, not only for the patients, for the physicians, and for the systems. The future of medicine, consistent, effective interventions that engage and empower patients and utilize technology and telemedicine is to more efficiently connect patients and providers. This is what this is all about. It helps the healthcare system become more efficient without sacrificing the quality of care and lends itself to higher patient satisfaction and compliance. I urge the committee to reconsider its preliminary recommendations and to create a new, unique HCPCS code for the PMKR machine. There is simply nothing else like this available for recovering knee patients. It truly has changed the game. It is certainly not exercise equipment. As a medical community, we need breakthrough medical devices like PMKR, and the only way to foster innovation is to provide a mechanism for payment so that providers and patients can benefit from these breakthroughs. The healthcare system, providers, payers, and most importantly, the patients all win. I thank you again for considering our request.
All right, are there any questions or comments?
Am I on? So tell me again about the telemedicine remote monitoring part.
Absolutely. Each machine is tethered through cellular data to a HIPAA-compliant Oracle cloud-based computing system. And as the patient uses it, it real-time reports the number of minutes that the patient used it for, what modality was being used, and the progress and outcomes of that session. So each 30-minute session is recorded and sent up. And then we're able to aggregate that data, combine it on the back end with the patient's clinical profile. So at that point, when we are in the cloud system, we can map that to the days post-surgery and to the surgeon, and then use that dashboard to make better evidence-based medicine decisions. So many doctors will tell us they'll write a script for 110 degrees range of motion discharge. So they don't write it for 21 authorized days, they give us an endpoint, and we work with the patient to monitor their progress and then make sure that they achieve that milestone and maintain it, and then remove the equipment. And we have a clinical team that supervises and looks across those data and then adjust our pace of outreach and engagement with patients based on what they need. So we break that one size fits all, and we send out the clinicians, therapists, or remote coaching by telephone as needed on a patient-by-patient basis.
So you maintain the data then. So a physician does not have to have a system or a way to log in and look up.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. That we certainly can connect into EHR reporting platforms if the hospital system or doctor wanted that. But right now, it's all within the current code covers both the use of the machine, the training of the patient, and the monitoring and compliance components of it through the software system.
And so then does the patient have to have a data plan, access to cellular or internet access?
We actually have, because of the elderly population and the dispersion of where the machines have been used, each machine has 2 SIM cards in it, which have different networks. So we can effectively guarantee coverage in 99% of the country. And if they don't have good AT&T service, it flips over to the T-Mobile plan. And it doesn't require any hooking into the patient's Wi-Fi network or anything like that.
Okay. And then you also mentioned pickup. So I assume this device is rented and that's how
Correct.
you worked with Blue Cross in Michigan. Okay, great. Thank you.
I was asking you a little bit earlier about the X10
Yeah.
from 2013. And is that one still marketed? Is that still being in use? Or have you discontinued the product altogether? Could you?
I'd be happy to elaborate. Yeah, it's the latter. That product was really been a progression of development from the core technology into the product that we brought to you today. The initial instance of the machine was used in outpatient clinics, and it was actually one of our orthopedic surgeons that had it in his clinic being used by his patients who said to us, "This is great, it's working, it's too late. You don't need this big 300-pound machine that they use when they can show up to a clinic, which is typically 2 to 3 weeks post-surgery. That acute period is when they need the machine." So we created new gearboxes and motors and a completely different machine, discontinued that clinic device, and kept the name. I can get that information through Cynthia to you, but it would have been the beginning of 2014 was our first in-home patient. And since that time, we've treated over 700 patients across the Midwest and tri-state areas, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, as well as the new version of the equipment is small and portable enough that we can ship it UPS for a reasonable rate. So we have sent machines to Florida, we've sent machines to Virginia, and then either sent out clinical staff to train and set up the patient, or in the case of Florida, it was someone who was using it for the second time and had already been trained. So we see real opportunities to use this where patients don't have access to a clinic or home care is not, efficient.
Okay, earlier you made comment about training them in the hospital.
Yes.
You start this treatment in the hospital post-op?
It was actually before they go to the hospital. So in many instances, we take the machine to the patient's home the day or two before the surgery so that we can train them prior to surgery. With Dr. Freeman and Dr. DeClaire, there was a clinical trial which is just wrapping up that explored the right intervention moment. So does it matter beginning therapy within 24 hours versus 48 to 36 hours? We haven't finished those, compiling those data, but presently we're not using it in hospitals. We do have 5 skilled nursing homes that are using PMKR machines to accelerate significantly patients' progression so that we're shortening the episode in SNFs, but we don't presently have any use in a hospital. Although we've had over 100 patients treated bedside within 24 hours of surgery. Thank you for your time.
Agenda item number 7, attachment numbers 15.75A and B. 2 separate related requests to establish 3 Level 2 HCPCS codes to identify components of the inflow temporary intraurethral valve pump system. Primary speaker is Terry Moore.
Good morning. I'm Terry Moore. I'm from VesaFlow Incorporated. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing there. We're a privately held company based in Redmond, Washington, which for those of you who might be Microsoft users, we're a neighbor of theirs, but somewhat in a cheaper neighborhood. But anyhow, we're here today to talk to you about the inflow system, okay, which is basically a more advanced technique than the present modalities for bladder drainage. And medical technology, as we all know, and we've heard some of my predecessors speaking here, has made some tremendous advances in recent years, but unfortunately, that's not true for bladder drainage, okay? Some of the techniques around really were discovered hundreds of years ago, and the basic design for catheter drainage for those who can't empty their bladders adequately was first invented in 1937. We all know the term Foley, all right? And it's basically a catheter with a balloon, holds it at the neck, and then urine drains down continuously into some kind of collection device, a bag, a container, whatnot. And the alternative for that is what's known as intermittent self-catheterization, where a patient would take a catheter and place it in their urethra into their bladder, and again, passively drain what they can from the bladder, and that has to be repeated as many as 4 to 6 and perhaps even more times per day. So the problem with urinary catheters is that they cause a lot of problems for indwelling catheters like a Foley, infection, incrustation with calcification, etc., and a very low quality of life, as most of you could imagine. Having a catheter suspended from your urethra outside your body, taped to your leg, and then with a drainage bag taped to your leg is, you know, not an ideal way to spend your day, and not just one day, but multiple days, or in most cases, the rest of your life. The CDC has actually come down, you know, very strongly on this, and catheter infections are attributable to over 13,000 deaths annually. Okay, there's actually a move which many of you probably know with respect to CODI, which is catheter-associated urinary tract infections, and it's obviously a very serious problem that needs to be addressed. And antimicrobial resistance is probably one of the, you know, the greatest things that we have to contend with when we need to catheterize a patient. Again, it's kind of that the bladder has to be emptied, and what are the modalities by which we can do it with the least amount of harm, I guess, is probably or complication. The population in greatest need is women, in this case, for our product purposes, is those with impaired detrusor contractility, or IDC for short. In the literature, this is also described as hypocontractile bladder, atonic bladder, whatnot, but the fact remains it's a detrusor or bladder that has no muscle function, okay? Most of us in this room, I would hope and assume, suffer from what's called a compliant bladder, whereas you sit and your bladder fills at low pressure, and then when it's time to void, you consciously make a decision that you're going to go in, and you have a normal micturition, if you will, is periodic and normal and forceful evacuation of that bladder. So you have that muscle that is actually affecting that process. The women afflicted with this basically have some kind of neurological impairment, okay, and that could be something they're born with, like spina bifida, or cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, etc., or it's something that they're rendered with at some point in acute onset in their life, so either a stroke, okay, a spinal cord injury, or some kind of damage via surgery or some other thing to their pelvic muscles. And then the other category is patients or women who basically end up with a disease like MS, where it afflicts them probably as young adults. It's the #1 neurological impairment for women. Okay, and just to give you an idea, there's over 250,000 women in this country who have to contend with the symptoms and the progressive decline associated with MS every day. Okay, and in addition to that, we have stroke patients we've heard a little bit about today. Likewise, those with other progressive orders like ALS, Parkinson's, etc. So these patients, this is just one of the many symptoms of life that they have to contend with. Okay. Right now, these women have two alternatives for doing it, and I just described them briefly, so I'm not going to dwell on what they look like on the screen. But there's catheterization of the urethra, and again repeated 4 to 6, maybe even more times a day, and a Foley or suprapubic tube for continuous drainage. Now there's a better alternative, which we believe is the inflow device, which actually allows women maybe a more controlled and dignified manner of sitting on the toilet and using it like everybody else in this room takes for granted how many times a day. Basically, the components of the system are this handheld activation device, if you will, so very discreetly sits in a purse or a bag. And basically, this one catheter here, which is inserted into the urethra and sits at the bladder neck. There's nothing external other than a little valve at the meatus. And in order to void, the woman simply sits on the toilet, holds this activator just above her pubic bone, and does this, and it actually activates a little motor in there magnetically that spins it, and it creates a magnetic field that spins that activator, creating a vacuum to actually actively draw that urine out of the bladder. Okay? And the advantage to that is what I talked about earlier, is that forceful evacuation of the bladder as with normal micturition. So as a result, she has lower post-void residual, and more importantly, more complete emptying of all the sedimentation that occurs within the bladder. So it definitely leads to lower infection rate, better quality of life, etc. The device is inserted into the urethra. It's a very simple catheter placement after she's sized basically for urethral length. A nurse, a physician probably the first time, will just basically put her in dorsal lithotomy. That's inserted into the urethra. It's basically a little plunger that spins, and those little flexible fins deploy at the bladder neck. It's designed to be replaced every 29 days. Okay, so one catheter per month versus as many as 200 a month for intermittent self-catheters. Okay. Again, as I described previously, sits on the pump, engages the activator, and then when she no longer sees a urine stream, okay, she would then come off the button, the motor would reverse, close the valve, and she's done. Okay, because remember, with these patients as well, they have no sensation of fullness oftentimes as well, so they would have no way of knowing when they were empty. So in this way, by drawing it out, they do know. Okay. Can see the advantage of ours versus the competing modalities. And again, intermittent self-cath, I don't want to in any way detract from the clinical efficacy of that. That's a very, very powerful and useful modality, okay? But however, there are many women who cannot or just don't want to intermittently self-cath, and I'll stress that again. The inflow device, and this was from the FDA expert, excerpts from their press release, and I think it's pretty powerful when the FDA actually kind of says something nice about your product when they approve it. And it's the most noteworthy is the fact that it reduces UTI, which even with intermittent self-cath being the gold standard, that's considered the lowest rate, and we actually had a better rate of UTI not occurring than even intermittent self-cath. It's been extensively studied for years outside the United States. And I think for the quality of life standpoint of many of these patients, again, it's a powerful argument. And again, as I said, CIC can be a very good option, is in fact the best option heretofore for women with these problems that I previously described. However, with patients with neurological impairments, often as their disease state progresses, they have problems with either their hands with grip and motion and or eye-hand coordination. So even those patients who may already be doing CIC eventually lose the ability to do it. And for someone has mastered and used CIC for years, would then be relegated right now to a Foley, okay, or a suprapubic catheter. So that would be a very unfortunate endpoint. Again, as I just said, and so basically the insole solution, easy for me to say, it's better for patients, okay, and it gives them another choice as opposed to what they're presently doing, okay. For payers, it's arguably cheaper, or even at the very worst, revenue neutral, okay, and providers, it's more effective. It's easier to manage these patients because we don't have the complications of UTI and having to treat those associated infections with antibiotics and whatnot. Okay, so in closing, what I would say is that we're asking respectfully to have our coverage denial or our HCPCS coding application previously submitted. We asked to have that reconsidered. And the reason we say that is that the preliminary decision was based on the fact that the volume of patients served was insufficient to meet the requirements of, establishing new HCPCS language. I would say to that our FDA market clearance did not come till October of 2014 after many years in the process, and therefore at the point that we made our submission, our enrollment was, I think, understandably low. However, we anticipate patient adoption to expand exponentially as women who are presently utilizing a daily regimen of catheterizing themselves 6 to maybe as many as 8 times a day are offered this as an option. And just to give you a case in point, there's over, as I said, over 250,000 women with MS alone, and 80% of them have problems either emptying or holding their urine properly, or a combination of the two. So it would be difficult to tell a woman who's presently using that she can't use this modality, because whereas her 200 catheters are covered, she would probably have to pay for this modality out of pocket. And I'll close with the example of we have a patient presently. She's an MS patient. She's in a wheelchair, and she's been able to successfully utilize CIC for over 10 years, but she's now losing the ability to abduct her legs because of the progression of her symptoms. So now her only option, if she can't catheterize herself, is to either have her husband or other caregiver catheterize her, or she would have to utilize a Foley. So again, we ask that we be able to give them this option instead. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, I think I have a question. Can I just hold that little VesiFlow piece
Sure.
for a second, please? And can you tell me, while I'm looking at this, can you tell me, and I have seen this before,
Sure.
what's your current enrollment?
Currently, right now, we're at 8 patients, and N of 1 with only 1 site open.
Okay. Okay. And so this resides, according to your application, mostly in the urethra.
Right.
And so this part sticks out.
Right. So basically
right
what
here.
happens is, imagine this is a bladder. So this part sits at the bladder neck, okay, at the soft tissue there. So it sits and it's anchored in place, and the length of the device vary based on the patient's anatomy and size to give the appropriate length. So what you basically would see externally is that's just flush with the meatus.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So this is, can I pass this around?
Yes.
Okay,
certainly.
and so this is really stiff. I mean, wait a second. So does anybody complain of discomfort using that?
Yeah. It's, I won't lie to you. You put something, okay, I'm sorry. There is definitely an accommodation period associated with putting this device in the urethra, okay? Is it painful? No. Is there device awareness? Most certainly, okay? And there's some patients who are more sensitized because of that than others. However, there's a subset that have no sensation down there whatsoever, which would certainly be the case for patients on chronic Foley catheterization. Again, what I think some of the discomfort would really come a lot of times, it's what we describe as positional stress, basically when the patient shifts or moves from sitting to standing or seated, whatnot. So it's usually something that you'll feel it, you move, and you sit back down. So again, what we have seen with that, and it's a very good point, and towards that end, the way we're even setting up our distribution, if you will, is that we're going to be very, very patient-centric, if that's the right word, in that we're going to have clinicians be there for those patients from their initial insertion. They really need some vocal anesthesia, as I've heard nurses call it before, to really help them through that first 2 to 3 day period where they try to get to it.
I thought it's mentioned in the application that initial insertion is actually in the doctor's office.
Yes, the first one would definitely be there. Well, outside the U.S., and again, it's really kind of a preference. This device can be safely removed at any time, so it's not like it's surgically implanted or whatnot. Even as you saw that in the deployed fashion before, the patient, a caregiver, could simply, at any time remove it if they needed to. In other countries, the patients will then insert the subsequent devices themselves or under the auspices of a caregiver.
Who do you anticipate inserting them here in this country?
I would say the initial insertion would certainly be right now. It would probably be the urologist, urogynecologist, and that's really more to the proper sizing of the device and also for the fact that if you're going to, as physicians in the room would appreciate, is any time that we're going to put a catheter or a device in the bladder, we want to do cystoscopy initially to make sure there's nothing wrong with that bladder or that sphincter mechanism or anything else before we would put a catheter in there. So after that initial sizing to measure the length of the urethra, establish that yes, she is a good candidate for this, then we would insert that device. Thereafter, they would probably come to the office and either a nurse practitioner or someone in the office could remove the last month's device and put the new one in. And that again would come to patient choice more than anything.
For those patients that lack sensation, what safety measures do you have in place in the event that the bladder gets full and they have no sensation to empty?
Okay, a very good point. Most of these patients now, remember, they're already on some regimen of catheterization now. So most of them do it by a timed toileting. So they're instructed by their nurse, their physician, that we want you to void 4 times a day, okay, 4 times, 6 times a day. And one of the things that we actually have built into this second generation of device is actually an ability to capture, almost do an automatic voiding diary, if you will, at least insofar as output is concerned. So it will timestamp to say when it was used, so we can track how often, okay, for how long, how many seconds it was pressed, and since we know it's 15 cc's per second, we actually will know truly in mLs per, total how much was voided in a given episode. In addition, we're going to have, this has actually Bluetooth capability, so my predecessor talked about making a seamless transition to, tracking information in the cloud. That's what we're going to do as well. And again, to the point of people who may not be so technologically savvy as the rest of us all sitting here are, we'll make sure that remotely goes up. And then the idea is that we could dictate it to come back to the caregiver of choice, so that the nurse, whatnot, at that prescribing site, and they would know, for example, okay, Mrs. Smith has only voided 3 times yesterday. We need to get her to go 4 and 5 times, as we've explained to her numerous times because of her drug regimens, et cetera. She needs to hydrate better. We'll be able to track all that and then trigger points. And then last but not least, we can actually then they can send a signal to the activator as far as a beep, as a reminder beep for them to, as a prompt to void.
So there's no pressure relief that happens?
No, in and of itself. That's a valve there. Now, however, if a woman, a lot of times these patients, we think they have no neurogenic capability whatsoever. What you'll find is as you start to normally fill and empty that bladder regularly, many of them will start to actually regain some of that ability. So if they have, let's say, an urgent episode where the bladder does have a contraction, they would leak around the device, okay, which is what you want it to do. That would basically afford your pressure relief valve. Good? Okay, thank you.
Agenda item number 8, attachment 15.102, request to establish a unique Level 2 HCPCS code to identify Blom-Sanger adjustable bioflange fistula prosthesis. There are no speakers for this item. Are there any questions or comments? Agenda item number 9, attachment 15.99. Request to establish a unique level 2 HCPCS code to identify a rotation medical rotator cuff bioinductive implant system. There are no speakers for this item. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. Well, at this time, we will take a lunch break. Please return at 12:55 so that we may begin at 1 p.m. If you are not returning for the remainder of the meeting, we would like to ask if you would gather all of your belongings in any trash. Thank you.